What's up YouTube, Zazubaar here, and welcome back to Zmmr. The 1933 version of King Kong is, as I established on Zmmr last week, a masterpiece of cinema and one of the best movies ever made. King Kong was an epic and told a classic story that it sucked you into. Being a fantastical epic, King Kong was a huge hit in the summer of 1933, and RKO rose from financial debt. Son of Kong was released the same year as King Kong, only during the Christmas season of 1933. Ruth Rose, who co-wrote the script for the first film, was asked to write the script for Son of Kong as well, and said to the heads of RKO, there was no possible way to top what was done in terms of a story in King Kong. It was simply untouchable. So she said, rather than try to top it, make it more comical. Son of Kong is unquestionably inferior to its predecessor in terms of story, scope, effects, and all-around impression. However, knowing what was attempted by the production team in Son of Kong, I find myself in somewhat of a conflict. Why don't I hate this movie? For it has a flaw that can't be overlooked. It's a sequel to King Kong. And although I don't agree with trying to make the film less of an epic and more of a comedy, I agree that it was a wise move in not trying to top what was done in the first film. What really does make this movie not god-awful is the cast, mainly Robert Armstrong as Carl Denham. As I said in my review of King Kong, he's my favorite character, and I like what happened to his character in King Kong, and we see the conclusion of his relation to the original proverb in this film. This is why this movie's good. Not great or even close to a masterpiece, but it's good because it takes a really well-done character from the first film and develops him further in the sequel. And isn't that one of the main things we should ask for in a sequel? Further advancing the characters we've grown to love and seeing them change on screen? And that's what Son of Kong completely nails, developing Carl Denham into an even more likable character, and doing it by humanizing him. But we'll get to that. I've basically covered the background of Son of Kong. The only other things I really want to note about the film's background is that RKO reduced the budget in shooting for this film because of how quickly they wanted it made, resulting in the smaller sets, less impressive effects, and the surprisingly short runtime even for 1933. The film only runs about 68 minutes. So with those things said, let's talk about what story this film tries to tell after the classic one King Kong told. The film picks up about a month after the events of the first film, with Carl Denham being buried under lawsuits and hate by the public for being responsible for what Kong did to Manhattan. He's broke because of this and being hounded by the press, government agents, and probably for the better, Captain Englehorn from the first film. He too is broke and at threat of going to jail because of helping Denham transport Kong to New York. However, Englehorn has an idea on how to make a living for himself and Denham by transporting cargo around the Pacific. Denham wants to escape all the trouble he and Kong caused in New York, so he agrees wholeheartedly to join the captain. They arrive in the seaport of Dakang, where Denham meets two important people. A young dancer named Hilda, whose father has recently died, and by the hands of a Mr. Hellstrom, who it turns out is the Norwegian skipper who gave Denham the original map of Skull Island. Both him and Hilda want to leave Dakang because of the death of Hilda's father, Hilda wanting to get away from the event, and Hellstrom for committing the murder of her father, and of course they both end up on the venture, leading to some tension. However, Denham and Englehorn have just planned another trip to Skull Island because Hellstrom told them there's also a treasure on the island, which is of course a lie, or so Hellstrom thinks. When the venture arrives on Skull Island, Hellstrom surprises Denham, Englehorn, and Hilda with a mutiny by the Venture's crew, who don't want to go ashore after hearing about what happened to the last crew who went ashore. They throw Denham and company off the ship in a small lifeboat, and also turn on Hellstrom, forcing him to join them. Having nowhere else to go, Denham and company land on a different side of Skull Island than they did in the first film, looking for shelter and the treasure. But also something no one expected. A baby Kong! Little Kong is about 12 feet tall, albino, and much friendlier than his old man. Denham and Hilda befriend Little Kong when they help him out of quicksand, partly because of Denham's remorse for what he did to King Kong. Little Kong protects Denham and company from the more violent creatures of the island, and even helps Denham find the treasure of Skull Island. However, the joy and apparently good luck everyone has quickly runs out when an earthquake tears the entire island apart and basically sinks it. Denham and company have to escape, and Little Kong sacrifices himself to save them and allow them to escape the sinking of the mystical lost world. Denham and company escape, Hellstrom's killed, and Denham and Hilda live richly and happily ever after. Son of Kong is at its absolute strongest when it's developing Carl Denham and concluding the theme and commentary that was explored in the first film. However, as I said, the film does contain a lot of comedic gags diverting away from the epic spectacle of the first film. Scenes are thrown in like Little Kong making wide eyes and shrugging at the camera, and him getting dazed after taking a hit from a giant bear. But Son of Kong is also vastly inferior to the first film because of one fatal flaw that can, as I've said in the past, make or break any monster movie. Ill-balanced pacing. How I determine if a movie has good or bad pacing is whether or not I have to repress some feelings of dread to actually put the movie on. Not to say the movie's unwatchable, it's just somewhat difficult to make it through some scenes. Like the really overly long scene at the show where Hilda sings and dances. It's not that the actress has a bad voice, it's just not what we're here to see. Again, the main thing that makes this movie worth it is Robert Armstrong's portrayal of Denham and the really good character development and completion of his connection to the original proverb from the first film. Oh, and I do recommend you watch my review of King Kong before continuing if you haven't already. I talked a lot about Denham already, and explained what the original proverb meant, so please refer back if you haven't already. Anyway, so we see the result of Denham's fall here. In the first film, he was a big-shot public pleaser and an adventurer who always went the extra 30 miles to please the public and keep things authentic. And because of his success, he didn't think there was a thing in the world that could stop him, until he brought Kong to New York. Kong broke from Denham's captivity from the chains he had constructed for him, and destroyed the public Denham was trying so hard to please. Now the public wants him to pay for it, and I'm sure hates him in some ways for what Kong did to the city. And now Denham is paying for it, he's living in a one-room apartment in what I can only describe as some sort of tenement building, and is flat broke. He's been humanized, he's been beaten, and what's really clever is Denham has a poster for his live King Kong stage appearance on the wall, and it looks at him every day and almost in triumph. Denham also talks to it in one scene where he's talking to the magazine writer when he says, "Old Kong, I'm sure paying for what I did to you." Which is reinforced by several other characters, like again the magazine writer, who lists off the charges and lawsuits Denham's facing. A summons deliverer named Mickey, who's always bringing Denham papers on new lawsuits he's facing from people affected by Kong's rampage, and Englehorn, who is one of the few people who humanizes Denham beyond what Kong did. Like one scene where he convinces him to become his partner in this new cargo trade he's becoming a part of, to get away from the lawsuits he's facing. There's this sense of almost poverty and a conquered feeling throughout the early scenes in New York and in Kang. The apartment where Denham lives is small and, well, unextravagant, the streets of New York look filthy, and the Mickey character is also a junk collector and puts Denham in dirty clothes to disguise him so he can get past some tax collectors. In Kang, Hilda's father's show is small, somewhat dirty, and the tent they use is cramped and dull. Also, Hellstrom is broke just like Denham and is coasting off people just to get his daily liquor. As I said in my review of King Kong, I think these movies are symbolic of what happened to America near the end of the 1920s and into the early 30s, the fall of our economy. King Kong was more about the Roaring Twenties, seeing the characters at the height of success and happiness, save Ann and Jax, whose position more improved over the course of the film. But Denham was a high-budget filmmaker, Englehorn had a big ship with a large crew, and Kong was obviously king of all Skull Island. However, we saw Kong conquer Denham by breaking the chains he built for him, and stand on top of the world's largest building. But then he was conquered. He fell off the building and died. Now in this film, we see the aftermath of both Kong and Denim and Englehorn's fall. Denim is now broke and living in basically poverty, and Englehorn is on the brink of losing his ship because of all the lawsuits. Hilda, too, shares the same theme. Her and her father were part of the biggest circus in the world, appropriately named Worldwide, and were at the height of fame and success. However, they too fell and are now also living in a impoverished environment, yet are still trying to be entertainers by having their own show. Another thing that's interesting, and I think contributes to the film symbolizing the 30s, is that all the characters want to escape from something. Denim and Englehorn from the hate of New York and the lawsuits, Hellstrom from decaying because no one there is giving him a job, and obviously the murder of Hilda's father. And of course Hilda wanting to get away from the murder of her father. Even later on, Little Kong, the dinosaurs, and the natives trying to escape from Skull Island when it sinks. I can't help but feel that this is symbolic of the American public of the 30s seeking a fantastical escape from their economically troubled reality, of which the first King Kong provided en masse. But even more, Denim is the one who symbolizes this the most. He's closest to being the people of America in the 30s. As I said, he went from being successful to broke in about a month, and was looking for a way to get out of it. Opportunity presented itself twice, once when Englehorn offered to take Denim with him to become a Pacific cargo freighter, and again when Hellstrom told him about the treasure, and Denim says, "Skipper, you know how I always said there wasn't a reason in the world for going back? Look, the answer to our prayers," meaning Hellstrom. "We're off again." Reaching Skull Island was probably one of the highlights of Denim's life, and now that he's broke and looking for escape, he's found a legitimate reason to go back to the place that really empowered him. Returning to Skull Island for the treasure is his fantastical escape to get away from reality. However, he's reminded that what caused his economic hardship, Kong, came from this place, and when he sees Little Kong, who I'll unfortunately have to address in a sec. However, Denim gets what he came for, the treasure, because I think it's his reward from really coming to grips with the fact that he put himself in his predicament when he actually apologizes to Little Kong for causing his father's death. I really love how this film really humanizes Denim with this, and makes him, I think, much more likable. And that's where this film really excels, in making Denim more human, more likable, and completing his interesting symbolism for America during the late 20s and early 30s. But now I think it's time to talk about what makes this film so inferior to the first one. Everything that doesn't involve Denim's character development. But let's tackle the biggest and main thing first. The actual son of Kong. Where in ever-living hell did that white fuzzball come from? Kong was so obviously alone on the island. Just his behavior around Anne and the dinosaurs indicated that. Also, Kong's son is really young. Gorillas usually stay in tight social groups for the majority of their lifetimes. And although this was 1933 and research in gorillas was practically non-existent, they had to know that parent and offspring stuck together no matter what. This is something that might even make Son of Kong unwatchable to someone who's a really diehard fan of the first film. It's too big of a plot hole to overlook. Kong's son is cute and somewhat fun to watch, mainly the scenes where he's fighting something, but he just shouldn't exist. Now, if this film had sucked me in the same way the first Kong had, I'd probably buy this, but this film isn't an experience like the first movie. It's a comedy. And although it's sometimes a little cute and Son of Denim's in-jokes are clever, it's just not engrossing. It's more like something I'd roll my eyes at rather than think is funny. Hell, Little Kong even does that. And let me just say this. All the motions and frames of O'Brien's stop motion in the first Kong had meaning and was just epic. When some of that is wasted in this film on Little Kong shrugging at the camera, I die a little inside. Now that should serve as a nice little segue into the next thing I want to talk about. The stop motion effects. They're again done by Willis O'Brien and his team, which means they're again very good, but again, nowhere near on the level of what was done in the first film. King Kong was revolutionary and set a new bar for effects in fantasy films. Son of Kong is just not as impressive. The fights are a little more standard, again some frames are wasted for comedy, and Little Kong even looks vastly different in some scenes. But I don't think this is in any way O'Brien or anyone's fault. It's the production company's fault for giving them a vastly smaller budget and rush shooting schedule expecting something as successful as the first film. The sets also feel much smaller and less grand than the first film. We don't even get one shot of the Great Wall or native village after Kong breaking out. And I think seeing the Great Wall fall during the massive earthquake would have been iconic, and it's not here at all because of a rushed shooting schedule and smaller budget. Max Steiner's score is also not as spectacular as the first films. Geez, I'm running into a pattern here. It has a little bit more of a comedic ring to it than an epic score, and that's just disappointing. However, I do think it's the thing that's least affected by the smaller budget, but maybe because a lot of it's from the first film. But I rest my case. Son of Kong isn't really bad, it just suffers from being a sequel to one of the greatest films ever made. Again, what's done with Denham is close to brilliant, and Robert Armstrong is really fun to watch. But less impressive effects, everything on Skull Island being basically one big plot hole, and comedy that for the most part isn't at all funny, makes it disappointing and sometimes hard to watch. The pacing is also again uneven and some scenes just don't seem necessary. I'm looking at you, Hilda. Also, Son of Kong kind of suffers from the opposite problem War of the Gargantuas had. Where that film had dull human characters and interesting monsters, Son of Kong has dull monsters and interesting human characters. For these things, I'll give Son of Kong a 2 out of 5. It's definitely not unwatchable, but its problems can't be overlooked, and the film itself isn't really necessary. There are much better monster movies out there, but there are also a lot worse. So if you are a fan of the first film and love the symbolism it has for 20s and 30s America, I do think this film is worth it for that. Alright, so that's Son of Kong. Definitely not a horrible movie, but again, it's a sequel to King Kong. Come on. On the next Zmmr, I'll be reviewing a monster movie that was selected by one of my viewers. The winner of the April Monster of the Month contest, FilmFan217. Congratulations and thanks for playing. On the next Zmmr, I'll be reviewing the film you picked, Terror of Mechagodzilla. See you then, Zazubaar out.
I wanna take you for a ride. I wanna take you for